What's up, Kingdom of Rock? This is Matt Gibson, and we're here today. It is February 4th, 2021, and I think things are getting better in the COVID crisis. It looks like we're getting some things rolled out, so maybe we'll get some music out there in the world again, here live, out in Los Angeles, Nashville, New York, all the places where the music business is, and
yeah, raise your hand who's had their vaccines for a shot.
Not yet.
Sorry.
I'm expendable.
Oh, it's funny. I just raised my right hand and I keep forgetting my shoulder hurts.
Right.
The guy said, which shoulder? I said, I'm left-handed. He goes, right shoulder. You're going to hate it if you do it in your left arm.
Oh, hey, there's Tommaso right there. Hey, Tommaso.
Hey.
Well, why don't we introduce our guest, Matt, before we get too far down the stream?
Yeah, let's do that. Sorry, I'm a little distracted today. Okay, so today, of course, it's me and Mike. Mike's been doing this since probably what?
The 30s.
The 1930s.
The 1930s.
Mike's been doing the music business for a while, and of course, Ted has pretty
Ted
much
Cohen.
had his fingers in just
I
about
I worked for Mike's dad. No.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, if you guys haven't been on Clubhouse, we've been kind of hanging out on there, and we're meeting some awesome people. And Ted is we've been hanging out in music rooms and stuff, and Ted was in there talking, and we just kind of hit it off. And Ted is just, man, he's such an interesting guy. He's worked for major labels, EMI, for example, and he's like a label executive for a long time. But really, the thing I like about Ted is he's got his fingers in a little bit of everything when it comes to tech and music. And Ted, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Pleasure. I've always been inquisitive. I mean, I appreciate it. Thanks for the kind words. I was going to say, Matt and I met in one of the Clubhouse rooms about a week and a half ago. Seems like a month ago. And it's been a fire hose of, if you haven't been on Clubhouse, if you're Android only, you're in a third world country.
That's Mike. Mike doesn't have it yet.
Mike, there's this thing called Clubhouse, and it's like if you've used fire, it's like electricity. Only
Could you write that on a note and mail that to me, please?
I'll fax it to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Matt and I and Brian Talibi, I'm always worried.
Okay, think of it like this. Like if you've got a bee and you take your bee out on a walk, a little pet bee, and they get wet, you've got to dry them off. So you got to towel a bee.
Talibi. Okay. And Brian, we met, and what's been fascinating for me is, oops,
that was crazy.
That was it. So we need a new co-host, Mike.
Yeah.
We're professionals. We are professionals here.
Yeah, I'm here with you. I'm here with you, Ted. It's a pity that Matt had to die in the middle of the broadcast.
That was it.
Oh my God.
We have an opening. Somebody hold your resume up to the screen. Yeah. We got an opening.
But actually, but why Matt's coming back from the dead? Just want to say that if anybody has Googled Ted, I mean, it's amazing. He was on buses. We just told us he was on buses with the Sex Pistols and Van Halen. Sex Pistols, one of the bands that actually got me to start playing music for real. So, I mean, Ted has been around forever with so many bands, Doobie Brothers, Alice Cooper, Prince. It goes on and on and on. But he's also a digital entrepreneur, which means that he's one of those superheroes that has the past so firmly, all that knowledge of the past, but he knows what the future is all about. So this is an amazing opportunity for everyone in the Kingdom of Rock to glean from your knowledge, Ted.
This is great. So I'll try and give you a very brief history. And each time I try, it's funny, I'm getting older, but the story on the bio gets shorter because I'm tired of telling it. I was born I was born in 1949, which makes me 72 years old. In my head, I'm still 30. I have when I was 30, I was 15. When I was 40, I was 20. In terms of, I'm out riding around downtown LA on an electric scooter, and I've only crashed the scooter 3 times in 6 months. And and the cracked ribs heal. So when I was growing up, hang on a second here. I'm hearing sound coming from somewhere. I remember where I was when I first heard the Beatles. I was with my father in the car, and they played "I Want to Hold Your Hand," and it was pretty exciting. I, being a joke, I'm a nice Jewish boy from Shaker Heights, Ohio. My mother and father threw a bar mitzvah party for me, and they hired a guy named Mike Douglas. Mike Douglas was a TV host that did a thing called the Mike Douglas Show.
I watched that show when I was a kid.
Okay. So my mom and dad, my mother professionally threw events for people. She was a party planner before the term existed. So she decided that my bar mitzvah was an evening at the Cohen Cabana, not the Copacabana, starring Ted Cohen in his first appearance as a man, with special guest star Mike Douglas as the host. He had just started the TV show. This one I'm elaborating on. It'll get shorter later. He had just started the show about a month before. He was a nice Irish Catholic boy from Chicago. He had never been to a bar mitzvah. My mother met him through a friend at the local TV station, at the NBC station. And he called and he said, "I'd love to MC the bar mitzvah. How does $50 sound?"
Huh.
And she said, "What?" He said, "Can I bring my wife and can she have dinner?" He literally had been where Frank Sinatra had been. And this is before my time, even though I was going to joke about Edison, but I won't. When Frank Sinatra was the singer in the Tommy Dorsey band. Mike Douglas was the singer in the Kay Kaiser band, Kay Kaiser Orchestra. Frank Sinatra went on to be Frank Sinatra. Mike Douglas became a piano player in a piano bar in Chicago. So when he got the TV show, he had been working on, there was literally, from what I heard and saw pictures, he was working for tips, like Billy Joel, with a big, brandy snifter, put a $1 bill or a $5 bill in. So he goes $50. He brings his wife. He says to my mom the night of the party, "Where can she sit in the kitchen and wait for me to be done?" He goes, No. You have a table. To make a long story short on this, my mom asks me to get up and say a few words, thank grandma and grandpa, whatever. And I get up there. 20 minutes later, she's going, "Stop, sit down, stop." And so there's a picture of me and Mike, which I'm not going to bother holding up to the camera. And it's it's a picture of me and him that my mother sent to him and he sent back. And it says, dear Ted, wishing all the best. You ad-lib very well." So when people ask me, when was your, you do a lot of public speaking. When did it start? I said, bar mitzvah, January 6th, 1964, 63, actually. Yes. So a few months later, or about almost a year later, the phone rings one day. And Mike Douglas's secretary, a woman named Marianne Moyer, calls my mom and says, "Mike said to call. We have a band from England on the show tomorrow. They're coming to Cleveland before they go to New York. And Mike thought Ted might like them. Would he like to skip school and come to the show?" So I go to the show to see the Rolling Stones do their first American appearance.
Awesome.
And it was amazing. And from that, I ended up getting into, all through high school, managing bands, putting on shows, working at a National Guard armory as the production manager when I was a junior and senior in high school. I managed Eric Carmen all by myself from the Raspberries. I managed Eric. And when Eric sings all by myself, that's usually how he should be. He should be all by himself. He's he's a wonderful songwriter. And he was a Cleveland zip code is 44120. He was a prima donna in his own zip code, and now he's a global. He was difficult. We kissed and made up.
Hey, Ted, you're not going to bum me out about all my heroes now, are you?
No, only one other.
Okay.
And hopefully it's not a big hero.
Okay.
I managed Eric in high school. It was great. We put on shows. I was good in science. I went off to Ithaca College in pre-med. because my mom wanted a nice Jewish doctor. And I got there, and 2 weeks after I got to school, somebody said to me one day, someone in my dorm said, "Are you going to go hear Rod Serling tonight?" And I went, "What are you talking about?" And they said, "Rod Serling teaches here." And I went, "Teaches what?" "How to write for television, how to write scripts for, TV shows." And I went, "I got to go." So I went to see him. It was transformative. I went to the dean of the communication school and said, "My mom wanted a doctor. Not my idea. I don't like blood, and I'm not going to be a podiatrist. So, can I switch majors?" I switched majors. 2 years later, I got sent home because I now was putting on shows in Ithaca. And at Ithaca, I was at Ithaca College, and I was working for the local promoter and chairing the concert committee and blah, 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 and working at the radio station. So I got sent home, and I talked my way into a lovely Jesuit college in Cleveland called John Carroll University, where I grew up. And 2 weeks later, I'm running the campus radio station, which had been like the Bible Hour, it was basically a religious station. We turned it into a rock station. I ended up meeting the local people in Cleveland. I met a guy named Billy Bass, who became like my mentor, connector. He introduced me to Frank DeLeo, who ended up managing Michael Jackson during the big years. Michael had, Freddie DeMann managed Michael. Michael had a bunch of managers over the years. Frank DeLeo was the manager during Off the Wall Thriller or whatever. They got me hired at Columbia Records. I was basically mentored, adopted, nurtured, and very grateful to Frank DeLeo and Steve Popovich, who ran Columbia Records at the time, promotion, and Billy Bass, and a guy named Marty Mooney. And there were just a bunch of people, and a guy named Lynn Doyle. They basically mentored and adopted me, and it created a thing for the rest of my life that I'm continually saying to people, "What can I do to help you?" And they're like, "What's in it for you?" Nothing. I just feel it makes life better. So I did local promotion for a couple of years. I was at Columbia Records for a year. I then switched to Warner. I had a bad habit of running away with the band. So I hated going to radio stations, and I loved going to concerts. And so after 2 years of bad behavior at Warner, they moved me to artist development, which was running away with the band. So they moved me to Boston. I started doing tours. My first tour was with an artist, Leo Sayer. You Make Me Feel Like Dancing.
Yeah.
And the band the first year was good. The band the second year was Bobby Keys from the Rolling Stones and Reggie McBride from Stevie Wonder's band, and the band, and Nicky Hopkins from the Rolling, also from Nicky played with, I think Nicky didn't play with the Faces, but Nicky played with Rolling Stones also.
Yeah, just about everybody.
Nicky was wonderful. And so I did that. And then I got good at working with baby bands on helping them, like, while I'm like taking them around to radio stations, I'm also, similar to what we were talking about last night on Clubhouse, saying to them, "Look, the show's good, but it could be better if you moved song 7 up to song 3 and moved song 3 back to song 6. It's not paced right." And I joked, later, I worked with Van Halen. I would tell David Lee Roth, "Please talk less." And I would say to David Byrne, "Please say something." So it was basically artist development was a combination of literally giving them input on what needed to be, on what could make them better, and getting them to connect with radio, with retail, with press. I wasn't a publicist. It was literally helping them build an image, a persona that was them. It was who they wanted to be. It wasn't like, "Hey, we think you should be a country artist," or whatever. It was, "How can we help you get really good at what you do?" So they started embedding me with artists. And so I had a run of what we refer to as baby bands, developing artists. But that ended up being Prince, Van Halen, Fleetwood Mac, Talking Heads, Pretenders, Sex Pistols, Doobie Brothers to a certain extent, but they were already on their way. I was good at working with new artists and good at getting artists like The Who hadn't done radio in 20 years, to go back into a radio station. And do live radio stuff, do backstage get-togethers, whatever.
Hey, Ted, that whole thing of artist development, I mean, I think it's a mystery to a lot of artists today. I mean, there's a secret sauce there. And it's funny because I'm just reading the Peter Frampton biography, and he talks about Frank Barcelona and Dee Anthony looking at the humble pie set and saying exactly what you just said. Dude, your songs are all wrong. One's got to be 5 and 5's got to be 1. And
exactly. And you bring up Frank Barcelona. We had back, I mean, I was lucky enough. There were in our department, I think there were like at one point 10 of us. No other label. The closest was A&M. Every other label had somebody that did artist relations. Mm-hmm. And artist relations was when Rod Stewart, I mean, let's say Rod's a bad example. Let's say when Eric Carmen's on Arista and he gets to New York, the artist relations guy from Arista takes him out for a lunch at the Russian Tea Room. And after the show at wherever, at the Beacon, takes him out to dinner at Gallagher's Steakhouse and tells him how great the show was. We didn't do artist relations. Mm-hmm. We did artist development. And the idea was that you had a career beyond a hit record, that you were so strong and you had such recognition that you never had to have, in parentheses after your name, a name of your hit single. There was a club in Boston, I don't know if you went to the Paradise, which was Don Law's club. Everyone who played the Paradise, Don would put Jonathan Edwards, parentheses, Sunshine, Jesse Colin Young, parentheses, Get Together. I joked that if the Beatles played the Paradise, it would say the Beatles, parentheses, I Want to Hold Your Hand. It was always had to be, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I'm sure everybody was different when you were in artist development, but what typically would you do to an artist to expand who they were, to make them, because you mentioned earlier, kind of make them bigger who they were.
You mentioned Barcelona. So Van Halen gets signed after chasing labels for 8 years and the whole thing with Gene Simmons financing their demos and whatever. They still hadn't gotten signed. Finally, they get signed by Warner. Templeman does the record. The record's brilliant. Now, do they go out and do a club tour? Do they play the Ritz in New York? Do they play the Park West in Chicago? Do they go out and do a small theater tour paired with another, developing band? They signed with Frank Barcelona and Barbara Skydel. And it was decided between Frank and my boss, Bob Regier, who I worked with at Warner, that the best thing was to get him out on a tour with a really big band. So the tour was Van Halen as the opening act, Ronnie Montrose as instrumental Ronnie Montrose, not Montrose the band. And what's his name? I'm seeing him right now. Think of it in a moment. The band was amazing, and the headliner was Journey. Van Halen killed them every night. Journey could not follow Van Halen. Journey had to they had to do their set. They took most of the ballads out, except for, when the lights go out in the city or whatever. Yeah. But people were snoozing during Journey. So it was, do we do a club tour? Do we do a headlining tour? In the case of the Pistols, it was decided that they should go do the South and play counter to doing New York, doing Chicago, doing LA, doing Philadelphia. The Pistols tour was Atlanta, Baton Rouge, Memphis, Austin, Dallas, Tulsa, and then San Francisco. And that was the end of that. And then Sid, that was the end of the band with Sid. They broke up. So we worked on, how do we get attention? How do we create heat around an artist? So that, Ricky Lee Jones, we had a great relationship with Lorne Michaels and the folks at Saturday Night Live. So Ricky did Saturday Night Live, and there was a showdown. I don't know if most people are familiar with her album, but her hit was a song called Chucky's in Love. And they wanted her to do another song on the album called Danny's All-Star Joint, which was also this sort of finger-snapping hipster pop song. And she decided she wanted to do Coolsville, which was very Tom Waits. And Lauren said, then we're going to kick you off the show. And Gary Katz, Steely Dan's producer, had joined Warner, and he came and met us at studio 8th floor at NBC and went in the dressing room with Ricky. And Lauren had agreed, because he knew Gary, that Gary was going to decide, could he talk Ricky into doing Danny's All-Star joint. He comes out and he says, she needs to do Coolsville. This is a career moment. And Lauren said, okay. And it was a career moment. So the relationship between a premier talent or an ICM or a William Morris and the label and the promoters, the Ron Delsners in New York, or Bob Kelly in Memphis and Nashville, or Larry Maggot in Philly, or Don Law in Boston. We could call up and say, we have this new artist. We need, the agency is so-and-so, but here are the dates we need to make it work. And it really was artist development. So, I mean, right now, Chrissy Hine can still go out on tour and do shows, and she has not had a hit single in 20 years, 15 years. So Pretenders could go out. If the Talking Heads were back together, if David hadn't done Broadway, I believe the Talking Heads could tour forever. Chris,
now, just to be specific about that, what in your mind defines that about an artist where without hits, they can still draw an audience?
Because they've established an image, they've connected, they've resonated with an audience, they've basically bonded in a way that, respectfully, I don't believe REO Speedwagon ever did. And I use them as an example, and I love their music. But if they had a hit, they could play an arena, and if they didn't have a hit, they could play a club in Chicago. It depended on a hit single. I don't think a band like REO, and if anybody wants to flame me on that, could sustain going out on a tour and playing 5,000 seaters, 10,000 seaters with no current hit record. It was dependent on a hit, not on a career with longevity.
Yeah.
And we had a pretty good batting average. I mean, I did the first 4 years of Prince, the first 6 years of Van Halen. So it was decided that Prince would play rock venues. So we did the Ritz, the Park West, the Rainbow in Denver, Flippers, which was a disco roller rink in LA. And it started to break off of that, and then Controversy, and then 1999, then Purple Rain. And, there was a level of cooperation between the artist, the label, the promoter, the agent, the management, that I don't think exists anymore. Well, and I was told by the guy I worked for, and we can go on to digital stuff. I was told by by Bob, never try and figure out, are you on the artist side or the label side? You're always on the artist side, and ultimately that will benefit both the artist and the label. So if there's a decision to be made where, well, I don't know if this is good for Warner Brothers, but it's great for whoever, go with the side with the artist. And that was my mantra. That was, my marching orders. I enjoyed 99% of what I did. The only artist I ever worked with that I'm sorry, I really regret that he wasn't who I thought he was Brian Ferry. He was just a horrible human being. And to prove that, in '83, I did the Avalon tour. And it's the first tour I ever walked off of, where I called my boss and I said, I got to come home.
Wow.
And in 2003, my brother, Ron, who's in Miami, who worked for Cellar Door Concerts, I don't know if you're familiar with them. They were another like Delsner and everybody. He calls me up. He's now, Live Nation has bought Cellar Door, and he took the buyout. He's now being hired by bands like Metallica and Alicia Keys to do box office, because he had been a major promoter and he knew every settlement trick in terms of, the towels were $10 each. No, they're not. The towels are $1 each. The Heineken was $300 a case. No, it wasn't. It was, you get it for 20. He basically knew how to go through a settlement sheet
Yeah.
on a tour. So he did Metallica, he did Alicia Keys. I don't know if he did Chili Peppers, but he called me. He goes, I've been hired to do the Roxy Music reunion tour in 2003. And I went, cool. And he goes, you worked with them. What were they like? I said, Ron, that was 20 years ago. I said, I don't know. I worked with 200 bands. I have no idea. And he goes, really? I thought you mentioned them to me once. I went, yeah, I remembered the tour, but I don't remember it that well. So a week or two later, he calls me and he goes, you son of a bitch. I said, does he still throw wine bottles? He said, yep. You have to learn to duck to the right because the bottle's going to arc to the left. He said, he's the most horrible human being I've ever met. Why didn't you warn me? And I went, after 20 years and breaking up and getting back together, I prayed that he had mellowed and I didn't want to taint your opinion of him. He goes, he's horrible. And I went, meanwhile, I flew to New York and I went to see them at what was called the Felt Forum at the time, the small part of Madison Square Garden. And the show was wonderful. I was backstage, but I stayed on the other side from where the dressing rooms were. During the show, I watched it from stage right. Dressing rooms, I think, were on stage left. I never went in. I couldn't bring myself to go in and go, hi, Brian, look, I know we didn't get along, but it's great to see you. And the show was, no, I was done. I mean, it's for better or for worse, especially since Ron told me how bad he still was. If he had said to me, this guy's wonderful, I would have gone backstage going, hey, good to see you again.
Let me ask you this, Ted.
Yes,
as,
Matt,
as far as artist development goes,
yes.
What are the biggest things, the most common things that you have to like talk to young artists or even kind of people that haven't quite made it to the next level? Like what do you find that people fail at the worst?
Being in too much of a hurry. So it's and that's been the parallel as I got into digital, is basically having to say to them, not, when am I going to do such and such? Not yet. You're going to do this next. You're going to, Van Halen opened for Journey. Then they co-headlined with Black Sabbath, even though the album, by the time the Black Sabbath tour happened, they had already sold like 4 or 5 million albums. They had sold more records than Black Sabbath had ever sold. And it was like, well, why are we opening for Black Sabbath if, we're bigger than they are? Learn the craft. What they did was they took what they had done at the Whiskey and turned every arena into a larger bar. But now you're doing stadiums. And if you're going to do stadiums, that's a really big bar. And so they had to grow into the room. I mean, they were bigger than life. The rooms were really big, but it was good that it took a year. And then a year later, they were headlining arenas. They were headlining festivals. The 6 years that I worked with them, they still had their head on straight. I can't comment what happened afterwards. I left Warner the same time that David left the band, and it just happened to be the same time. I left in June of '84. David left the band, and Noel Monk, who was managing them, got let go as the manager. So I stayed in touch with Michael Anthony, the bass player, who's just a wonderful human being. And then he ultimately left the band and went with Sammy. While I was with them, it was a lot of fun. And it was amazing to watch them every night. And it was amazing to see how they could whip a crowd into a frenzy. And it was fun. So I think artist development is a lost art. I did a panel about a year and a half ago, over in Marina Del Rey at a place. And one of the guys on the panel said he did artist development. And I said, oh, cool. I said, tell me about artist development. What is it? And I didn't say anything about what I'd done. He said, well, we help the band open bank accounts, and we help them decide if they want to be an LLC or an S corp. And we help them draw out what's going to happen if the band breaks up. And I go, geez. I said, that's like a junior business manager.
Yeah.
It's not artist development.
No.
He says, well, I said, that's basic, and they should get their business together. Absolutely. but that's not, the toughest thing. And we've said it again, I don't be redundant, but we've said it in the rooms. The best input is honest input. And one of the things I was able to do, we were all able to do, was me and a guy named Larry Butler, who was very involved with ZZ Top, and Ellen Darst, who I sent out with you too, and she ended up managing them in the US, is we would give honest feedback about how the shows were doing, what worked, what didn't work. If the artist was being a bit of I could say privately to a band member of a band, you're being a dick, and I think I told you this the other day, but I continually agonize over not being a jerk. Every once in a while I am. And Jewish Guild is my kryptonite in terms of all of a sudden, if I do something stupid afterwards, I'm like, you effing idiot. And Maggie and I went to a bar about 1.5 years ago in LA here, and they had coasters on the counter. And did I show this to you the other day, Matt? Oh, so they had coasters on the counter in this bar, and the bar is really cool because it's a motorcycle shop. And during the day, they fix motorcycles, and all of the accessories, the clothes and everything are on pulleys, and they raise everything up at night, and then it's a bar. So I know it's still open as a motorcycle shop. I drove by there the other day, but I don't think they're doing shows. So I'm trying to figure out, what beer this is. And I turn it over and it says, so I have a stack of them here on my desk, and I drink a lot of soda. And when I put my drink down and when I pick my drink up, it says, don't be a dick. And it's sort of like, it's not Tony Robbins, but it's, it gets me through the day.
But it's like, as bands are emerging, like the big bands that you work for, I mean, would it be difficult to tell someone like a Van Halen or a Prince, hey, the show's getting a little sleepy in the middle there, or man, okay, I can't believe you wore those shoes,
Could you do it today? I don't know, but I did say to David like I said, I did 6 years with them, and the tours got bigger and bigger and bigger, and more security guy. Noel, the manager at the time, had been a security guard at the Fillmore in New York for Bill Graham. And all of a sudden everybody has walkie talkies and code names and whatever. And, a guy got, not rousted, excuse me, but a businessman stepped off the elevator, I think in Detroit, and got grabbed by 2 of our security guys, because our security guys thought we had the whole floor, and the guy had been staying there for 3 or 4 days before we got to the hotel. So while they didn't book anybody else on the floor, they neglected to tell us, by the way, there's a guy who sells encyclopedias from Des Moines. So he gets grabbed, like I said, it got bigger and bigger, and it got crazier and crazier. But I said to David one night, I said, you really have to stop forgetting the lyrics to Dance the Night Away at exactly the same point every night, because people are coming to multiple shows. And when you go, dance, oh shit, man, I'm so fucking drunk, I gotta stop doing this Jack Daniels, man. Oh, what the hell, I'll have another drink. And then I said, when you're forgetting the lyrics at exactly the same point every night, when we're doing 2 or 3 nights in Chicago, they might figure out that it's part of the the shtick. And now WWE is much more accepted as wrestling's fake. Yeah, it's fun to watch though. I don't think it would be as big a deal right now because it was part of David's shtick. Yeah. But I said, if you want those guys in the front who are, Jack Daniels aficionados to believe that, hey, I can drink Jack Daniels and still, play to 20,000 people, pick a different place to forget this song. Yeah. I got to tell you, you mentioned Prince. Mm-hmm. I never had a single idea for Prince. I just sat there going, are you fucking kidding? It was so good. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would tell you, virtually every other band I worked with, I would have a suggestion whether they wanted it or not. And I'm going, hey, it's my opinion. And I would say and we didn't have the same, like I want to say, like almost biometrics to figure it out, in that we didn't have cell phones in the audience. So today, if a band is doing a show, I can tell when the audience loses interest because all of a sudden you see everybody's head down. They're not trying to take pictures or take a video. They're texting somebody, or they lose interest. You don't have the they're doing other things, and so basically, you could just watch people fidget in the audience or get up and go to the bathroom, or it's it was like walking out, stopping and watching a show 20 minutes into it because you're bored. So I would sit out in the audience. I'd be out at the board, or I'd be up in one of the things I did for years, for better or for worse, I would always have a couple pair of tickets in my pocket. And if for some reason Matt ended up getting, I see what happened. Matt ended up in the nosebleed section in the back of Madison Square Garden in New York. I would go up to the very top row in the very worst seat that I could find in the hall and hand you 2 tickets. And I'd be like, this is a scam. You're trying to trick me. Nope. You got 2 seats in the 5th row down front. And you know why? I said, because, you came here and you ended up here. Go watch the show. I loved the whole theater of it. Like I said, I did it for 10 years. The Roxy Music Tour kind of broke my heart a little bit. I'm being melodramatic, but it did. Mm-hmm. Followed by Asia, who I'm sure you know Steve Howe.
Oh, yeah.
On the first tour, they loved each other in '82, and on the second tour, they hated each other after the first album broke. They were staying in separate hotels with separate road managers and not talking to each other. And the first tour had been, whether you like Asia or not, it was John Kolodner at Geffen had introduced them all to each other, and it was like some other bands, it was put together. But when they were playing the first year, it really was phenomenal. And the second year, they weren't speaking. I mean, it really was heartbreaking to watch. So in April of '84, for those of you out there, we're up to 1984 now, and we've only got 40 years to go. I'm just going to cut my wrists and make it easy on all of you. 83 was, they weren't speaking to us. It was miserable. So in the 3rd week of April 20th, 1984, I had just been out with Robert Fripp and Tony Levin, King Crimson, on the Discipline tour, which was wonderful. Dude. And Robert Fripp is one of the most wonderful, smartest, an intellectual virtuoso. I mean, he's an intellectual. He's a virtuoso on a guitar. He's a moral human being. He was wonderful. Tony Levin is a dream. And they invited me to, I love that. I did Discipline with that the red cover with it. And they called me up. They were staying at the Sunset Marquis. We had just finished the tour. I don't play anything. I just finished being on their tour. And they said, we're going to the Beverly Center to watch this new movie, Spinal Tap. And why don't you come with us? It's supposed to be funny. And I went to the Beverly Center and we watched Spinal Tap. And for the first half hour, I laughed. And for the second half hour, I smiled. And for the next 20, 30 minutes, I'm sitting there like going, my whole last 10 years is a parody, because everything in that movie happened with a band I was with. Mm-hmm. Whether it was with Asia. I mean, I had Jeff Downs' wife. Jeff was the keyboard player in Asia. Just a wonderful human being. Call me up and saying, are you finding girls for my husband to cheat on me with? And I went, where did you get that? I'd never seen him with a girl. I'd never seen, Carl Palmer was a bit of a womanizer, but John Wetton was, but Steve Howe was, we'd put him back in the road case and wheel him to his room. I'm teasing. Any resemblance between Steve Howe and the Crypt Keeper is coincidental. But Jeff was like a Boy Scout on the tour. And his wife calls me one day saying, you're finding girls for my husband. I'm like, where? So I just know it because I see how you guys hang out. And I went, no, I'm finding girls for me. I don't need Jeff's on his own.
You should have told her that he actually likes guys instead and throw her off the trail.
Exactly. Well, it's funny you say that. On the Prince tour, Dirty Mind tour, I got a crush on Lisa Coleman. I didn't know she was gay.
Yeah.
I thought she was rejecting me. She was rejecting the whole category. So I felt less hurt.
Yeah.
When Prince passed away, I went to the memorial service with Des Dickerson, and we went to the Film Academy here in LA. And I had seen everybody in the band over the years since 2016. Since 85, I'd seen everybody, 4 or 5 times, and Des frequently, but I hadn't seen Lisa. And I said to Des, "Where's Lisa?" And he pointed to her across the lobby in the Academy, Motion Picture Academy Theater. And I see Lisa, and I walk up to her, and I'm 5 inches from her face. And I went, "Hi." And I expected her to say, "You look familiar," or "Where do I know you from?" or "I'm sorry, I don't know you." She goes, "Teddy?" And I put my head on her shoulder, and I went, "I still love you." And gave her a hug. And a similar thing happened with Michael Anthony. He was with Sammy at the British Embassy, the British consulate here in LA 5 years ago. They were doing a music night at the consulate. And I went to see Sammy, and it turns out Michael came. And I see him across the garden in the back garden where they have the events. And I walk up behind him, and I drape my arms over his shoulder. I'm behind him, and I put my mouth up to his right ear, and I go, "You don't write, you don't call, you never invite me to lunch." And I expected him to push my arms off and turn around and go, "Who the fuck?" Without turning around, he goes, "Teddy?" And I went, I loved him too. It was like, I said, "How?" He goes, "You woke me up every morning for 6 years. I'll never forget your voice." He was like, "Hi, we got to go to the radio station. We got to leave now. Come on." "Yeah, but I just woke up. Don't worry about it. Get dressed. We'll go."
Hey,
So I loved that. I loved that career. But in the middle of it, go ahead, Michael. I'm sorry.
Well,
I need moderation.
This is awesome. But one thing I think Matt and I do want to get to for the Kingdom of Rock peeps out there is, as you mentioned earlier to us, it's kind of the Wild West out there. Anybody can get a song anywhere. And I think people are concerned. I really can't make money on streaming. There's so much competition. Everybody's got a YouTube page. Everybody's got social. How do I break through all this distortion and get anybody to listen to my song so I can move forward as an artist? Do you have any advice for that?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, if you find, let's say you get a hold of like Tommaso, who's on here, and you think Tommaso, because you heard him on Clubhouse, is going to like what you're doing, reach out to him. I mean, like we've been saying to people, DM me on Instagram and I'll get back to you. All of us who, whether we're deep in the industry or just trying to get into it, everybody, the myth that the digital future was going to slow things down so we could work an hour a day and then ponder what was happening with the moon. That's not true. And you had the pandemic on top of it. I'm starting at 6:37 in the morning, 6:30 or 7 in the morning, and going straight through to 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, and then watching a lot of television and falling asleep. I'm averaging about 3-4 hours sleep a night. So if we happen to connect and I say, "Send me your music, I want to listen to it," and I say, "I'll get back to you on Tuesday," and I don't write me a crappy note of, "You said you'd get back to me on Tuesday and now it's Wednesday and you didn't keep your word," because I will probably go, "You're absolutely right. I'm a piece of crap and you shouldn't talk to me."
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's like, I thought I'd ping you. Have you had a chance to listen? If you're going to listen to anything, I sent you 3 tracks. Listen to the second one. I think that best, represents, what I'm good at. I have there's a songwriter who might be watching, might not be watching, who's been very patient with me. I'm sort of helping him I'm not managing him. I'm not consulting him. I met him in a chat window on a sync workshop. And he was talking about how he was using, his name is Nico Korolog, and he was a composer who learned to program and was writing algorithms to take things that he wrote and then tell it to, okay, do some variations on this,
Mhm.
because I think I like this, but it's it's almost like dropping the notes into Close Encounters into that keyboard, and all of a sudden it takes off on its own.
Yeah.
So he's not a computer programmer trying to write music. He's a songwriter trying to enhance his craft. So he's been insanely patient with me in terms of, I swear I'll call you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. And he'll write me at noon going, is it 10 yet? Where you are? And so we've continued, sporadically to collaborate. And every once in a while, in deference to having to listen to me ramble like this, I'll send him a note saying, I talked to so-and-so, write him. He wants to hear what you're doing. And I really enjoy helping people. I feel very guilty. I joked about it before, but I feel worse when I don't get back to somebody than the person I didn't get back to. And if you multiply it by people, Avi Berger.
Yeah.
Well, it was in the room last night. She said she had 200 DMs. She was behind 200 DMs because we continually say, send me a link, send me a song, send me a SoundCloud. When Maggie and I went to Mexico a month ago, we were down in Tulum, and I got into a conversation with the guy sitting at the next table at a restaurant on the beach. And it turns out, do you know Pete Gambark?
No.
At Atlantic. Pete is an A&R guy at Atlantic. I was talking about music to Maggie, and the guy said, "Are you in music?" And I went, he got a much shorter version. I used to be, but now I work in digital. He said, "Do you know Pete?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Really was. He's a great guy." He has sent me 5 songs. We met a month ago. I've listened to 3 of them. I told him we're talking tomorrow morning. I said, I know it's taken 2 weeks longer than I told you, but I really need to sit with a pair of headphones on with the lights off and listen to your music, not to hit play for 30 seconds and go, like it, don't like it, whatever. And I usually send people to other people. I go, this is great. I'm going to introduce you to Matt, who can work with you and whatever. And I can't right now. I don't want to take on the responsibility. Yeah. So if, find somebody that gets what you're doing. I've said, and we can't do it during the pandemic, but there were 2 guys that I met at the Ace Hotel in New York that 2 of the doormen who they're on SoundCloud. I think it's called Small Planet. And I heard them as I came into the lobby of the Ace 3 years ago, and maybe 4 years ago now, say, okay, so we have it on SoundCloud. What do we do now? And they just said it as I walked in the door. And I went, time out. What do you guys do? They ended up coming up to the room that night. They played me their music. I liked their music. I was speaking at NYU for do you know Jason King? He's running the NYU Clive Davis program, the Clive Davis School of Recorded Music. I brought him to Jason's class. I introduced him to a bunch of people. And my recommendation at the time, and you could do it online, you could actually do it now, was find a bar in Brooklyn or in Manhattan or in Williamsburg or in the Bronx and grab Tuesday night or Wednesday night for 8 weeks. And you're going to perform for 8 weeks in that bar, but you're going to find 2 or 3 other artists, whether it's EDM, they're EDM. So it would be another EDM artist, or it could be a jazz artist. Find 3 artists that terrify you on how good they are. Mm-hmm. And basically do a combination of your showcasing and your curating. And you're not stacking the deck with artists. They go, well, we'll look good because we've got Ted's band playing and Ted sucks. Mm-hmm. So challenge yourself, and you're going to get people who are coming back for 2 reasons. 1, to hear you, and 2, hear who else you think matters. And because it gets into this bigger thing of, right now, while we're doing this, there's probably 20 other live podcasts going on. So when somebody says, hey, I'm going to watch your podcast, or I'm going to come see your show, with all the best intentions, something else comes up. So try and create as many points of collision that you can create. Mm-hmm. So, it goes on, and I always jump off at this point. I meet bands that say we're playing at South by. When are you playing? Thursday night at 7:00, the second night of music. We're playing on 6th Street at Maggie's. And I go, you're fucked. And they go, what do you mean? Because Lady Gaga will announce a free show at Stubbs. And your 6 months of planning for your one show at Maggie's, you're going to have 10 people in the room. Plan a gig on a corner with battery powered amps at 2:00 on Saturday. Do a show with some other group. Do something Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Do something every day, different things, different venues, in an empty field, across from if you've been to South by, across from the Hilton, find an empty corner and play acoustic if you can. You don't want to do Stephen Hawking unplugged.
No, you just hit this thing about, so many musicians we know, Matt and I know, and of course, that South by thing would be like the pinnacle of their career. I got a gig at, whatever. I got one night, and this is going to make this is going to make me.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. It's that old thinking where it's like, as you said, you got to be bumper cars and collide consistently all over the place.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I haven't talked about this since it happened. Tony Hsieh passed away from Zappos.
Yes.
And the one thing at the height of his game before he started spiraling, his whole thing was live in a small community and have as many collisions a day with interesting people as you can. Mm-hmm. Because it sparks conversation, it sparks collaboration. And, again, at a South by, this is I started preaching this. You want to, if you believe, even though you could have 300 people RSVP to your email that they're going to come see you at Red River. I don't know the Mohawk, which is unfortunately where that idiot drove into the crowd. But you're playing at the Mohawk on Red River. Something comes up. They get invited to a screening of the new Spielberg movie. They get invited to the Vivo party where it's open bar and Tito's is giving out. They've got trash cans filled with vodka and orange juice, and you end up literally brokenhearted. So create collisions, figure out every different way that you can interact, be persistent. Don't be annoying, be understanding. When I was on with Tommaso a few minutes ago, we were, like I said, we spent an hour talking about similar things. I said about this thing about you being pretty good isn't good enough anymore. You've got to be, you went from being pretty good meant people liked you. Then you had to be pretty great. And now you have to be pretty amazing. And Tommaso replied, yeah, but you also have to be pretty humble. So you have to be able to roll with the punch. And if somebody does invite somebody RSVPs, so Matt RSVPs, he's going to go to Mohawk and see Mike's band, and he doesn't make it. You don't write him a note saying, hey, you dick, you didn't show up at my show. You go, sorry you missed the show. Here's a board recording of the show. I'm posting it on SoundCloud.
Yeah.
When you get a chance, just move the conversation forward. If hey, you're really a jerk. You didn't come to my show. You're absolutely right. I'm a jerk.
I talk about that a lot, mostly to myself, where when I write a lot of emails, and I try to get people to come on the show, or I try, I've written like Stevie Wonder or, whatever back in the early days when I didn't have any clout, I'm just trying to get somebody to come on the show that I could talk to that would really have some depth, to them as an artist. And so one thing my mentor, Grant Cardone, says a lot is he says, he's a sales guy, and he started in cars. So he's like, look, if somebody doesn't call you back, never, ever, ever assume that it's because they don't want to talk to you.
Right. Exactly.
Like, just never do it. And because 99% of the time, that's not the case. And even if they don't want to talk to you, there's ways to get people to want to talk to you. Sometimes you can offer help. Like you can study, like if you wanted something from TED, you could go out and look at all of his social media You could find out where he's communicating the most, go out there, start talking to him on his posts, hang out with him, and get to know him a little bit. And you could probably get Ted's attention and get him to give you a little bit of time to help you with, figure out a problem or something, or maybe there's a connection that you could, hook him up with, and he could hook you up with a connection. I mean, there's so many ways to build whatever it is that you want to build for yourself as an artist.
Unless there's buckets of vodka and orange juice.
Well, yes. But like I'm building a tech startup right now, Neural Tunes, and Mike and I are building it. Well, I don't know. Can we say?
Yeah, I guess.
Ted's an advisor on Neural Tunes. So we,
out of a meeting on Clubhouse, I was talking about, and I can't do it probably from this end. Can you plug Spotify into this and play a song? Is that possible? Do we have enough time? Are you stopping in an hour?
Yeah, we need to stop in an hour, but we keep it at around an hour because we have to edit it down if we don't. So
okay, but there's a song that I told you about by Jennifer Warren's called "Song of Bernadette."
We can't play music on here because if we do, Twitch will shut down our live stream.
Oh. And I know that Amazon can't afford via Twitch to pay for music, so I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
So sad.
That song has a physical and psychological effect on me that whenever I'm having a frantic moment, I can put Jennifer Warren's "Song of Bernadette" or Todd Rundgren's "Be Nice to Me," or I can give you half a dozen other songs that basically center me and get me back to okay, I'm not mad at the whole world. I'm only mad at, my landlord. And that's why I got interested in what Matt and Michael and to a further extent, Brian are doing. There's really cool people out there. They're doing cool stuff. If we have a minute, I would like to go back to how I ended up on the Van Halen tour in '84 to why we're talking today. So in
go.
Do you have time?
Go that way.
Really quickly, in '77, I ended up in Chicago in a hotel room, and Jobs and Wozniak walked in looking homeless with a little zipper case, and they unzipped it, and they went, "This is the Apple I computer. It's going to change the world." And because Warner Records and Atari were part of Warner Communications, I got in touch with the Atari people and said, "I'm into gadgets. I'm into what's next." And started hanging out with Atari and eventually became the liaison between Warner Music Group and Atari. And then we started a group in '82 where we sat for, I think it was a couple months, like once a week. And it was a group led by Alan Kay. And I don't know if Matt, you're familiar. Alan Kay invented the mouse and the interface. Apple. He was at Xerox PARC, and he invited Steve and Woz over to see this graphic interface at Xerox PARC. And they went off and built the Lisa. They did an homage. They didn't steal it. They did an homage to what's Alan's work. He left Xerox PARC and came to Atari and started talking about the CD was coming out in '83. And once there was a digital music format, what would music fans want to do? So in '82, we talked about burning playlists. We talked about streaming. We talked about downloading. At the time, my modem was a 300 baud modem. My Atari computer had 16K of memory. Yeah. My storage was a cassette drive. So we were saying, we don't have the storage. We don't have the processor power. We don't have the bandwidth. But when we do, what would people want to do? And we talked about a majority of what we're doing now. The only thing that we didn't anticipate at the time was that FTP would become part of peer-to-peer. FTP was going to be, you wanted to get a song from Warner, you downloaded it from the Warner server. You wanted to get a song from Sony, you downloaded. Then peer-to-peer came along and completely blew my mind open. And I ended up calling Napster up and working for them. So I met Jobs and Wozniak. I started hanging out with Apple in '82, saw the movie in '84, quit my job, ended up a few years later at Philips Media. We were doing multimedia CD-ROM format called CDI. And I ended up coming in as a consultant. I had been like chasing them saying, you really need to do music with this. You've got an amazing format. It had 8 stereo parallel channels. You could switch between instrument. You had a 16 channel board in a disc. And so I said, I know the Rolling Stones people. I know The Who. I know Van Halen. I know Fleetwood Mac. And one day they called and they said, okay, we want to hire you. And I said, okay, David Bowie, Fleetwood, karaoke. So they hired me to do a karaoke project. It won all kinds of awards. They ended up then hiring me. I went to Island Records, and a guy named Len Fico, a really great guy there, introduced me to the Cranberries. And I started working. I met them in December of '93 at the record plant in LA, and then at the Roosevelt Hotel the next day, and explained to them what CDI was and what they could do. I got them all camcorders and had them basically just shoot video on the bus, shoot video in the dressing room. And we ended up coming up with a disc called Doors and Windows. And it came out. And the thing about it was the audio tracks would play on a CD player. The video files, if you didn't have a CDI player, but your computer had an MPEG board, or you had a Mac with QuickTime, the video would play in either QuickTime or an MPEG one. Anyway, we ended up selling 250,000 of them. But over the 10 years that Philips Media existed, we went through $1 billion with a B. And for some reason, Philips corporate in Holland shut us down. I don't know why.
$1 billion in like overhead.
$1 billion in cost between 87 and 97.
Yeah.
We shut down on January 1st, 1997.
Yeah,
I started consulting they put you into this executive turnaround program where you went and played office. You literally had a desk and an office and an assistant that was shared who answered the phone. Ted's office. Ted doesn't have a job, but Ted's here. I did that for one day and I went, are you fucking kidding me? And I started going out looking for things I could do. And I ended up, I started consulting for Prodigy, the internet service, not Prodigy, the band.
I remember.
And then for Amplified, then Liquid Audio and Rioport and the original. I ended up with 25 clients in the first wave of the digital space. And then it went from there. I went to EMI, was there for 6 years, got into fights with Steve Jobs over iTunes, left EMI in June of 2006, and have been, this chapter of my life has been consulting startups the way I worked with developing artists, helping them do the right thing at the right time, not speaking at South by to show a PowerPoint, but to speak at South by showing the app, what they've actually built. So
let me ask you
trying
this.
To talk. Yes.
Do you think artists, the whole idea of building a tech startup around something you're passionate about and your music as maybe cool branding for that? What do you think of the idea of an artist creating a tech startup that can produce revenue that they can siphon off of as an artist to promote their art? So
you've got two of those right now. You've got Mix Halo, which was created by the lead guitarist from Incubus, whose name I'm forgetting right now, so I won't even fake it. And then you have the two brothers from Good Charlotte who created Veeps.
Oh, yeah.
And Veeps was just invested in by Live Nation.
They can do whatever they want now, musically.
They can do whatever they want now. But what's great about it is that you end up with the things that are created by artists. And Mike Shinoda, I always get his name up, from Lincoln, Shinoda.
Yeah.
Years ago, a really smart guy named Mike McGinley, they're affectionately known as the Goon, said to me at K-Rock's Christmas event, the K-Rock Christmas concert, this is Mike Shinoda. This is Ted. You two need to go in a dressing room and talk about tech. And I went, oh, yeah, he's the leader of Linkin Park. Okay. Really smart guy. And Linkin Park has been very smart about what they've done digitally. He's really been smart about fan engagement, using social media to drive fans to events that he puts on. There's an app called Planify. I'm not working with them anymore, but it was a bunch of tour managers who basically created their own tour logistics system. Because if you've got 300 people on the Beyonce tour, you really don't need to know where the bass guitar roadie is staying if you're Beyonce. So all the information is compartmentalized into what you need to know, where do you have to be, and you can see the other pieces, but you're not overwhelmed with, this fire hose of here's everybody's flights, here's where the buses are, here's where the trucks are, where do I have to be and when. So it's called Planify. It's very cool. And those people create great stuff. It's the people who create a solution and then go searching for the problem they think that exists. And that's where it goes south.
Yeah. And that's true. And I guess the thing that I'm starting to really try to wrap my head around is the whole concept of the artist. Every artist plan of like, here's how you succeed is kind of like dependent on generating something from other people, like other people's resources and money. All the traditional sources of resources and money for musicians are, record companies, publishers, tours and things like that. Right. But there's so many easier ways to make money than in that highly competitive system. You can create opportunities for yourself where you don't have to depend on anybody. Like, for example, I'm working on my first record, and when it's released, I've got friends at the top. I have friends all over the world. I have people that will tell me how to do it right, when to do it, the best way to do it. And all I have to do is follow through, and I'm going to have money and resources, and it's going to all be mine, and I can decide how to do that, So,
but then that comes down. Okay, go ahead. Finish. I'll let you finish before I disagree. Go ahead.
No. What do you think of the artist?
Well, Matt is nothing but
power.
He's nothing but enthusiastic. So be gentle. Be gentle with him, Ted.
I will.
I mean, there's people that go out and say, I want to go be on tour, and they just spend the money. Look at Dead Daisies. Right. That's a good example. Right. They fly around on a private jet and they do all this cool stuff. And the guitar player he manages an investment, a family investment trust or something like that. So like
family being the operative word there.
Yeah. Maybe.
I mean, well, but here's the thing. You can go out and do some really cool stuff, and you don't have to. Are there easier ways to make money? Yes. But the watching something grow and become what you believed it could be, I think is I take a lot of pleasure out of the art. One other thing I want to touch on really quick, because of my mentor complex, I ended up mentoring. I ended up having a guy come intern for me at EMI in 2003. He then went off and started a company called Lyric Find, which is the lyric service that powers Apple and Amazon and Google. And I joined the board in 2006. I've been on the board for 15 years, and I get paid a consulting fee. So I'm now working for my intern. It was a great outcome. I saw that this guy was really bright, and I wanted to help him. Losing the thread here for a second. The point I'm trying to make is you can see your vision through. You have more tools. You can't look at Spotify as a revenue stream. Spotify is your megaphone. Social media is your megaphone. Whether it's your merch, your music, your idea that you have for a TV show, whatever it is, you're using this megaphone to basically develop an audience. But no band in the US ever made money from radio. They made money from record sales. And if they made money, but in most cases, the money that you got from the label, if your manager and your attorney were really good and really greedy, your advance equaled pretty much what you were ever going to make in 90% of the cases. Mm-hmm. Every once in a while, a band like Boston came along that, changed all the rules in terms of the deal structure. So use the megaphones to your best advantage, and don't, everybody that's railing about Spotify doesn't pay enough. Spotify has given more artists the opportunity to find an audience without paying indie promo guys. I mean, back in the day, we could spend $500,000, quote, breaking a single. And in some cases, depending on the artist's deal, that money was recoupable from the artist's royalties.
Yeah.
So we'd go out and hire people, and I won't name them. We go out and hire people to pay radio stations to say they're playing the record or play the record. And then that money's recouped. And it's not recouped dollar for dollar. It's not you sold $500,000 worth of albums, so and you owed 200, so now you only owe 300. It's recouped at your royalty rate, 15%, whatever. So the label could be in profit, and you're still sitting owing the label money based on an artificial repayment scheme.
Yeah,
it's almost like paying the minimum on your credit card and finding out. You know,
it's funny. My old one of my old managers, just for the sake, because we're on Facebook, so we're nostalgic, just showed me. He sent me all these old, radio station, independent record promoter slips that the bands would get. Hey, we're on KRQR. We played you 5 times. And the independent promoters would always show you these things and say, I know you're paying me $1,000 a month or whatever, but look, I've got 50 pieces of paper that shows that somebody listened to you.
Right. But in a lot of cases, they literally were paper ads. In some cases, you'd be told that your record's being played on in your hometown station, and you'd sit and listen for 24 hours and it never got played.
Yeah.
Even though the station, because some indie promo guy, usually not the label people.
Yeah.
Induced someone at the radio station to say that they were playing your record. Mm-hmm. It didn't actually get played in a lot of cases. It was what we referred to as a paper ad, or it was played at 3 a.m. And once things came along, like there's a service called Warm out of Scandinavia, and Warm tracks radio all over the world, both online and terrestrial. It can tell you where you are really getting played and how many plays you got, and give you really deep reports. It's a guy named Jesper. What is Jesper's last name? Jesper. There we go. His name is Jesper Skibsby. The company's called Warm, and they're out of. I'm probably sucking all the bandwidth out of my house.
Warm Music? Real-time radio tracking. Yeah, here it is.
That's it. Yeah, you should share the link. It can tell you, are you really getting played? Are you really? He's from Denmark, and he's a wonderful guy. And I chased him to be a client. And he's never been a client, but I still talk about it all the time. I love what he does. And it's not like, well, if you hire me, I'll tell you I'm good. And if you don't hire me, I'll tell you you're not good. I love what he does. And literally, if you want to find out if your track's being played somewhere, Warm is a great place to start. And it literally, the numbers should change here in a moment. Wait a second. There we go. There we go. Watch. 28,000 radio stations, 7,000 cities, 150 countries.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm.
There's a company called Musio that a friend of mine, Dick Wingate's working with. It's artificial intelligence music recommendation. MUSIIO. There it is. No, IO. There it is. Wait. No, not Museo the robot. Yeah, there it is. No, that's not it either.
You sure?
Oh, there it is. Music. Yeah, there it is. Automate your workflow. Okay.
Yeah.
I said workflow. I thought it was how to make a car. So they're doing some really cool stuff. I had a client, Musimap, that would tell you. It would tell you recommended playlists based on seeding it with a few tracks, but the recommendation engine was amazing. But I'll tell you where the real satisfaction comes, and maybe that's a good way to wrap it up, or maybe not. If you could look on for a moment with a screen share, look for a video, look for Pete Townsend and Adele. And this was Pete Townsend and his girlfriend Rachel in an Airstream trailer back in the early 90s, interviewing artists while Pete was out on a tour through Europe. Him and his girlfriend in this portable like podcasting studio would interview artists. Did you find it's, you see Adele and Rachel and Pete in a sort of a purplish room.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay. So look, this is Adele at the beginning of her career. Now, if you go full screen for a moment, if you can, there. And now, so somebody called me one day. I was at CES in Las Vegas, and someone called me and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm at a cocktail party." He said, "Where are you going to be after that?" I said, "I'm going to my room." He said, "I'm sending you an email with a link. You have to look at this." And I go, "Why?" He says, "Trust me, go look at it." So go in about 29 minutes. It's Adele talking about the start of her career, but about 20. Yeah. Okay. Where are we at here? Did we run off the deep end here? Let's see.
Well, at least Matt's still in his chair, so that's good.
Okay.
There we go.
So let's see what. Okay. Go back about 25. Go to 25 if you can. I'm sorry. And let's see what she says. I'll tell you. I know it by heart. Someone said, "Watch it, watch it, watch it."
Well, I can't. I don't think I can play it. You won't be able to hear it.
Oh, you won't hear it?
No, I don't think so.
Let's see.
Let's try it. Do you hear that?
Nope.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
brokenhearted.
not
Anyway,
set up
what
for
happens? Anyway, Pete's sitting there, and Pete said, "What's the most fun you've had lately?" And Adele goes, "I got to go to the Brits." And she said, "I wasn't feeling well, and I had a cough, and I had to perform, but Prince was there." And she says he was amazing, and I got to meet him, and she was like a little kid, because this is, again, beginning of, her first, the record had just come out. And she says to Pete, "Have you seen Prince?" He goes, "No, back in like 81, 82, there was this guy from Warner Brothers on the road with us, and his name's Ted Cohen. And I asked him, 'What have you seen lately that you like?' And he said to me, 'Prince, you've got to see Prince.' And I said, 'Is that the guy who wears stockings?' And I said, 'Yeah.' And he said, 'Yeah, I'm not interested.' She said, 'Well, that was 10 years ago. Have you never gone to see him?' 'No, I regret it.' But Ted kept saying, 'No, you got to see it. I want you to see it.' And I just never was interested. And I kept telling Ted to stop telling me about it. And he says, such are my prejudices. And I tried to explain to him, yes, but it's like David Bowie dressing up in Aladdin's Sane or whatever. It's stage clothes. He goes, yeah, but he's wearing stockings. I'm like, give me a break. That was in January of 2013. In March of 2013, and I'm in Vegas, and I watched this and I'm going, he mentioned that I was beating him up every day. You can listen to the album. You've got to see this. Blah, blah, blah. I go to Austin for South by in March, and I talk about serendipity a lot. I end up meeting people because I turn around in a room and you guys, pre or post COVID, and you're standing there and I go, "Oh, you're so-and-so. Let's talk." I'm walking across the green right across from the Hilton in Austin. If you've been to South by, Michael.
Oh, yes.
So
Yeah.
right across from the Hilton, there's that like town square thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I see a limo pull into the fire station. And it's a stretch Mercedes, which you rarely see. And I go, "Who the hell's this?" Pete gets out. And I went, "Hi." And he goes, "Teddy?" And I went, "Yeah." He says, "How are you, man?" And we talked for a minute. And he goes, "By the way, I saw Prince last week at the O2. I finally saw him a week ago. You were right. He's amazing. I missed 20 years of Prince." And I'm like, well, it's even more. What is he? 82, 90? He missed 30 years of Prince. He said, "I went to the O2 to see him. He was brilliant." I went, "Great." 3 years later, Prince had passed, Prince passed away. But I like when I say to somebody, "I get you. I get this. I want you to experience this. I'm telling you, you're going to love it." And it goes, maybe I'll go back one more thing. You can have a technical error and cut me off. When my first job was was buying for a chain of record stores in Cleveland before I worked for Columbia Records. That was the first job that my mentors put me in. And I'm now a kid who's never worked in a record store in his life. I'm the co-buyer for 34 stores around the country, but I've never worked behind the counter. So I called the manager of one of our stores and I said, "Could I come in on Saturdays? I'll work. You don't have to pay me. I want to work behind the counter at the store and see why people buy music and what they like and whatever." And it was my own market research. At the time, the albums that were out during this 6-month period were Tea for the Tillerman, Cat Stevens, Fire and Rain, James Taylor, the first Emerson, Lake and Palmer album, Stephen Still's solo album, Elton John's Your Song album. And I would meet Michael and I'd go, you're going to love Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I know you're going to love this. Take the album home. If you don't like it, I'm here every Saturday. Come back next Saturday. I'll give you your money back. I never had a record returned. And I would like sort of do, I think I get you. And I know the music and I'm going to pair it up. And having people come in a week later going, I love the record, man. That was perfect. Turning somebody on to good music or a great film or a good book or something that makes that emotional connection. At the end of all this, whether it's digital, whether it's, working in a college radio station, I've loved when people say, I loved that mix you played last night, or that app you told me about. I found a song I would have never found in my life. And for me, that's part of the payback. The other thing is watching people move up and grow. We got a call. I know we're running way over. We got a call last night from Beirut, from a guy that I met at Medium 18 years ago, talking about how they're dealing with the pandemic there and whatever. I'd met him at Medium in France. He was in a heavy metal band called the Chords in Beirut, Lebanon. He's now running Warner Music Group in Central Europe. I'm sorry, in Saudi Arabia. I'm not Central Europe. It's called EMEA. It's the Lebanon, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Syria, the whole area there. He's the general manager of the Warner Music Group. Watching him go into that role and watching him grow over the years, I just said to him last night, you have no idea how happy I am for you. And that's it. So I'm happy that I've met you guys. I'm looking forward to working with you. And if anybody's still here, this has been fun.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Ted. It's been a careening conversation, but tons of great data. And I think the main thing is just, being open to bumping into people, being open to help people, being open, as you said, turn them on to good music or good whatever.
Just being open to helping people. And if you're on the other end, be open to be helped. Listen to what people say to you. No one's doing it to be mean to you. Mm-hmm. They're doing it out of, look, hey, I liked your show, but, I'm not sure about whatever. Just roll with it. And I've enjoyed what I've done, and I'm not done yet. The funny thing, as I said at the beginning, I'm 72 now. I was on a call last night with somebody, and they said, well, I'm working on this thing, but the guy we're working with is 72, so he probably doesn't get this. And since it was a potential new client, I didn't go, fuck you. I get more than you get, whatever. Let's leave it on a good note. I had a woman that came over for a party one time, and we didn't talk much, but when she was leaving, she walked up to me and she goes, I got to go now. And I went, namaste. And she goes, no, actually, now must go. So I'll leave you with that.
Okay, we should wrap up though, Ted. Matt, so can you take us out?
No, I've been drinking Jack Daniels since we started this, and I've forgotten what we're doing. Check it out.
Oh man, okay. Hey.
Well, thank you.
Did anybody put a question up? And did it?
Yeah, we answered a couple of questions, I think. Okay. But just since Matt's drunk and died earlier in the broadcast,
I'm kidding. That was the David Lee Roth joke.
We are. Thank you, Ted, so much for being a part of this. We're excited to, talk to you more in the future. And thank you so much for what you're doing for Matt and I and for Neural Tunes. Much appreciated. We'll talk about that more, Kingdom of Rock. But for now, it's past your dinner time, I guess. So we're going to say goodbye. And don't be a dick.
Don't do that.
Don't be a dick.
See you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.